welcome to Utah. This has been my home for 13 years, and as John said, I am a professor in the Department of Nutrition and Integrative Physiology at the University of Utah, just down the hill. So I welcome you to Utah. My job today is to give you the background, basically the science behind the nutrition messages that Dan is then going to walk you through. So I will mention the message, but I want to focus on sort of the science that guided the message. So we'll start with the first message. Potatoes provide the complex carbohydrate, potassium, energy you need to perform at your best. And I want to focus on the carbohydrate. These are the currently approved messages under that broader scope. Carbohydrates are an important fuel source for athletes and active individuals. Glucose is the primary fuel for your brain and a key source of energy for working muscles. And it is important that athletes and physically active individuals consume adequate carbohydrate on a daily basis in order to maintain optimal glycogen stores and a ready supply of carbohydrate for exercising muscle. When it comes to athletic performance, carbohydrates are the most important nutrient for an athlete. Carbohydrates should make up the majority of the athlete's diet. For most athletes, that'll be about 60 to 75% of the total calories that they consume in a day. Endurance athletes need a little more carbohydrates than our strength and power athletes. So endurance athletes require 6 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight per day, whereas strength and power athletes require slightly less at 5 to 7 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight per day. In addition to consuming adequate carbohydrate on a daily basis, it's really important that athletes time their carbohydrate appropriately around exercise. And so consuming adequate carbohydrate before, during, and after exercise is going to be key to optimal performance. Before exercise, the goal is to basically top off your glycogen stores. Just like if you're going for a long drive, you need to top off your gas tank. And that will help delay fatigue and improve performance. During exercise, providing some carbohydrate will help provide glucose to the muscles to prevent depletion, and that will delay fatigue and improve performance. And after exercise, you're providing glucose to replenish those glycogen stores and basically get you ready for your next training bout or competition. Down at the bottom here in the box, I basically just have the currently approved recommendations. And these were developed by a number of different sports organizations and nutrition organizations in concert with each other. So where do potatoes fit in? Potatoes fit in very nicely when it comes to the carbohydrate message. In fact, as far as the nutrients in potatoes, carbohydrate is probably the best thing we can say when it comes to athletic performance. A medium-sized potato provides 26 grams of carbohydrate. So this will fit nicely into both a pre-exercise and post-exercise meal. I did want to caution, however, that a potato by itself will not be sufficient to serve as the sole component of a pre-exercise or post-exercise meal. And then I've given you a couple of examples to basically highlight this point using our average 150-pound individual. So for pre-exercise, a 150-pound individual would need to consume about 68 grams of carbohydrate. Since one potato is 26 grams, you can see that you need to consume about 3 potatoes in order to meet that, which is unlikely. However, consuming potatoes as part of a meal, so consuming some other carbohydrate-rich foods along with it, will provide you with the amount that you need. For post-exercise, a 150-pound individual would need to consume about 136 grams of carbohydrate within 2 hours after their training bout, which would be about 5 medium-sized potatoes. So again, they can't serve by themselves, but consuming that along with some other carbohydrate-rich foods, as well as some protein-rich foods, which we'll talk about in a minute, would be helpful. When we use the term athlete, particularly in the world of nutrition and sports nutrition even more specifically, when we use the term athlete, what we're referring to is an individual who trains or exercises for performance. Their goal is to exercise in order to compete in an event, and they're hoping to win or place highly in their age category or what have you. So the goal is I'm exercising with the intention of competing. So it's exercise for performance. There are other reasons that people exercise. I may exercise to lose weight. I may exercise to lower my blood pressure, so for health reasons. But when we talk about an athlete, their goal is to exercise to improve performance because they're competing. It may not be at the Olympic level. Maybe it's just a local 5K, but they're still competing. Does that help? Clarify? Yeah. Okay. As far as during exercise, potatoes can be utilized with some creative preparation and packaging, obviously. They can be actually a pretty nice during exercise food. They do provide water, so potatoes are about 80% water, and fluid is an important thing to consume during exercise. Potatoes are also a good source of potassium, and I'll be talking about that in a minute. Potassium is an electrolyte that's important for both muscle function and neurological function. I will focus a little bit more on the cramping issue when I get specifically to potassium, so I'll skip that for now. Sodium is also a very important mineral. It's an electrolyte, and we do tend to lose a fair amount of that in sweat when we exercise. So adding some salt to potatoes that are going to be consumed during exercise is beneficial. Another word in the message that I mentioned to you before is potassium. So I wanted to focus a little bit on that and explain sort of the science and the rationale for including potassium. So potassium is a key intracellular cation. It regulates the intracellular fluid compartment, so very important in fluid balance. And since we lose fluid in our sweat, having adequate potassium to maintain that appropriate fluid balance is important. As I mentioned previously, potassium is also an important mineral for muscle contraction, including the heart muscle, very important in exercise, and nerve impulse conduction. So getting those nerve impulses down to our muscles to tell them to contract. Potassium is lost in sweat, not to the extent that sodium is, but we do lose some potassium in our sweat, and it should be replenished post-exercise. One of the myths I wanted to clear up, because I have heard it talked about, and it's something that you might get asked as you're talking about potatoes and performance, is the myth surrounding potassium and muscle cramps. Existing research does not support the notion that potassium will either prevent or cure a muscle cramp. So I'm not sure how Bananas got that into any messaging, but there is no existing research to support potassium's role in muscle cramping. If you are deficient, significantly deficient in potassium, it could negatively affect muscle, and actually potassium's role in muscle contraction is not in the contracting phase, it's in the relaxation phase. And that's sort of where the myth behind, if I have a muscle cramp, which is basically just your muscle is continually contracting, if I consume potassium, it will relax the muscle. And in fact, most instances of muscle cramping have nothing to do with a mineral imbalance. It's usually just a fatigued muscle. So people usually get muscle cramps because they haven't trained well enough. So, yeah. Again, potatoes have enough potassium to garner the claim a good source of potassium and compare very well to other fruits and vegetables. And even though from a sports performance standpoint, potassium may not play a key role in performance, obviously adequate potassium is important, it does play a role in health. And keeping in mind that while for an athlete, true, their primary reason to exercise is to improve performance, but a lot of athletes are also interested in improving their health. And the 2015 dietary guidelines do mention potassium as an underconsumed nutrient. They term it a nutrient of concern because it is underconsumed. And they specifically say and recommend consuming foods with the highest level of potassium. And they mention white potatoes in the document. Okay, the second message that Dan will walk you through, potatoes are an excellent source of vitamin C and a good source of vitamin B6. Vitamin C has several important functions with respect to exercise. It's important for collagen formation, and collagen is that structural tissue that is found under our skin and helps give our skin and other tissues integrity. It's important for bone formation, so it keeps our bones strong. Important for fat metabolism. So when you're exercising, you're burning fat, and vitamin C is important in that role. And then it is a key antioxidant. Studies suggest that supplementing with vitamin C does not improve athletic performance and may actually impair it. However, those studies were done with vitamin C supplements. That is, if I take a pill. What the research is recommending and supporting is that athletes get adequate vitamin C from foods. And most of the research now is turning away from supplements with pills and focusing more on getting adequate amounts of various different vitamins, including vitamin C from foods. Potatoes are an excellent source of vitamin C. They provide you with 30% of the daily value. B6. B vitamins are very important in athletic performance. B vitamins function as coenzymes, so they're helpers to enzymes. And enzymes are substances that basically catalyze reactions. So without them, all of the different reactions in our bodies couldn't happen. And the B vitamins in particular are coenzymes for enzymes that are involved in energy metabolism. That is, they help with turning carbohydrate, protein, and fat into fuels that our bodies can use. B6 is particularly important in both carbohydrate metabolism with respect to glycogen metabolism and protein metabolism. There is some evidence to suggest that athletes who exercise strenuously and also limit their calorie intake, so if you think about those athletes that are not only training for performance, but they're also training to help regulate their body weight, is their dieting, they could be at risk for vitamin B6 deficiency. Just as a little side note, my mentor when I was doing my PhD actually did a fair number of studies in the area of B6 in this whole area and was one of the first to publish data on this. Potatoes are a good source of vitamin B6. Medium potato provides 10% of the daily value. The last message I wanted to mention is the protein message, and it reads like this. As a key component of muscle, protein is an important nutrient for athletic performance. A medium-sized potato has 3 grams of complete protein. For context, 1 egg provides 6 grams of protein. And so there is some research to suggest that consuming carbohydrate along with protein post-exercise can aid in recovery. It may enhance glycogen resynthesis, and this is particularly true if you don't eat a ton of carbohydrate post-exercise. So if I'm eating more of a mixed meal, having carbohydrate plus protein does enhance glycogen resynthesis. Adding some protein post-exercise will help with tissue repair due to any damage that might have occurred with exercise. A 5.2-ounce potato provides 3 grams of protein. It is a complete protein. It provides all 9 essential amino acids. It does have a relatively high biological value. But again, I wanted to put this in perspective for you so that we don't overblow the statement. The recommendation through the athletic organizations is that athletes consume 20 grams of protein post-exercise. So again, a potato can contribute to the protein needs post-exercise, but a single potato by itself will not provide all of the protein that you need. So biological value, when you look at a protein, you can evaluate it based on its amino acid composition, which means does it have all the amino acids that you need? And in most cases, we're interested in those 9 that are essential that our bodies can't make. So you can look at it just based on the composition of essential amino acids, but you also have to take into account when I consume that protein, is it going to be digested? Is it going to be absorbed? And then is that protein going to be used to synthesize muscle tissue or enzymes or antibodies, whatever it's used for? So biological value takes into account not just what its constituent amino acids are, but how well it's digested, absorbed, and utilized. Okay. And with that, I'm done.